House of the Dragon, and if the recent views are anything to go by, people rarely want me to give you the meat and give it to you raw. Wrong show, but it makes me laugh. Beware of incoming spoilers. The episode was maybe an improvement on the last one. They cleared up some of the mess from the last episode. It got dragged down a little for me by the worst scene in the episode, which was Daemon being a creepy groomer uncle again. He ends up kissing his niece openly on the beach, with it being only dumb luck that nobody saw them. They have sex on the beach later, and the show plays what sounds like a romantic version of the Targaryen theme. And what are you doing, show? This is not romantic, it's effing creepy. It's her uncle, and he's acting towards her in a sexual way since she was, what, 14 or 15? This almost felt like an endorsement. Stop trying to normalise this. It's not okay. I don't care if it gives you a bit of a frisson from the wrongness. That's a bad House of the Dragon. Bad. Can we maybe have some normal relationships, please? If you're going to have sex in the show, can we maybe have some healthy, enjoyable sex, ideally between two people that aren't brother and sister? If you want a good sex scene, you can do it the Game of Thrones way and introduce the character of Alicent's cousin, played by Lana Rhoades. Maybe bring back Sahara Knight again and her extensive experience on films such as her 2008 film, Din Partner mit dem Mund verwöhnen, which, if your German's not up to snuff, roughly translates as pamper your partner with your mouth. Now, I'm not a huge fan of relationships and sex in TV and film, although I realise as a group, often men see romance initiated in film when someone unfeasibly gets stuck headfirst in a washer dryer, but I'm not immune to it if it's done well. I'm trying to think when it has worked. Maybe Han and Leia in Star Wars. Maybe Cary Grant and Grace Kelly in To Catch a Thief. Or Jon Snow and Ygritte from Game of Thrones. That sort of relationship is something that House of the Dragon's missing. More of a slow burn. And him doing something nice for her with his mouth in Game of Thrones appeared to have gone so well that the actors Kit Harington and Rose Leslie ended up married in real life. It's always nice to get a happy ending. That's what she said. Guys, if you're going to do sex in the show, can you please not make it weird? So far, by my counting, of all the marriages in the show, only one has not been incestuous. Stop trying to normalise this, it's not okay. What happened? Did you hire most of your writing staff from Alabama? Now we have a different one in the UK. For that joke in the UK, the butt of the joke would normally be either Wales, Norfolk or Derbyshire. Insert as appropriate, just not into one of your relatives. The best scene is Corlys and Rhaenys having a conversation. And that's been happening a lot. Maybe I've started to really like long conversations, or maybe it's because this series couldn't provide a good sword fight if its life depended on it. Lord Corlys is still angry that his wife didn't get the throne, and his wife replies saying, "It's not justice for your wife that drives you, it's your own ambition. Your desire for the throne, if not for yourself, then for the scions of your house. I gave up the idea of wearing a crown a generation ago. It's you, Lord Husband, who refuses to abandon this pursuit, even now at the cost of our children." He replies, "What is this brief mortal life, if not the pursuit of legacy?" She says, "Legacy may be why you live your life, Corlys." She wants their home to pass to their daughter's line, because the princess's kids aren't their son's children. She says, "We're alone here, husband. You can speak the plain truth as we both know it. Rhaenyra's children are not of your blood, but Laena's are. They're her legacy." Her husband refuses. He knows that the kids aren't his grandchildren. He knows that they aren't his blood, like he could miss it. He says, history does not remember blood. It remembers names. What they did in this scene isn't perfect, but it is something, and it goes a long way to patch up the damage from last episode. A lot of care has gone into this show, and I appreciate it. We open up and we're on Driftmark, the seat of the Velaryon family, at Laena's funeral. A service is being read to assembled nobles. And this is more good work from House of the Dragon. There's a quick cut to Otto Hightower as he preens the symbol of the hand on his lapel. This is some good character building. They get so much into a single second and a gesture that shows how attached he is to power and position, and his sense of self-importance. As the funeral goes on, Daemon laughs manically as they talk about how Velaryon blood never thins, as he looks at the princess's kids, knowing that they have no Velaryon blood in them. It seems Alicent's eldest son is now betrothed to her daughter, and dear God, again? What are you doing, House of the Dragon? What is this? The eldest son, Aegon, is not keen, apparently because the girl does not seem in full control of her faculties. Not because she's your sister, then? No? His brother, on the other hand, says he would happily marry her. He says it's to keep our Valyrian blood pure. Firstly, his mother wasn't even Valyrian, and where are these ideas coming from? I can't do this now, not again. House the Dragon, what is it with the purity of the bloodline stuff? Can I not get through a single episode of a thing without fascist ideology beating through the wall like the Kool-Aid man? Just no, not now, no time. If you want me to go into this, ask below, otherwise I'm sidestepping that because that video sounds like a good way to get banned. The show is, if anything, going a little bit too fast to let most of the relationships properly cook. I wish they would have taken their time a little bit more. Laena's death would have been so much more impactful if we'd gotten to know her better. Laena's daughters at the funeral are heartbroken. They've realised they've lost their mother and their father is a git. So the princess sends her oldest son, Jace, to go and comfort them. And God, they're standing next to each other. And you're just making it worse, House of the Dragon. Anyone can see that Laenor is not his dad. Thank God they had the sense to clean this up later. Jace is conflicted, too embarrassed to say anything and awkward. He knows Harwin was his father, so he doesn't feel a link or a kinship to the girls. I mean, even if Laenor's not his father, he is still related to the girls. They're just not first cousins like they would be if he was Laenor's son. They are... hang on. You know what? The Targaryen family tree is so effed up I have no idea what they are. They're not first cousins via Laena and Laenor, but the girl's father is the boy's mother's uncle. So that would make them whatever that is. Maybe tell me below. Jesus, George, why you like this? Anyway, no time for that now. This'll have to be a two-parter again. House of the Dragon episode 7. For starters, let's have another look at this scene of Daemon being a creepy groomer uncle. This is not okay, Daemon. That's your niece. So, they're taking a stupid risk by kissing out in the open on a beach. Is that a problem? Well, this is something that goes right back to my review of episode 1, where I pointed out the reckless risks that Daemon and the princess consistently took. So this may seem like a stupid and reckless thing to do, and it is. But in context of the show, for this pair, that's entirely in character. What else can we say about it? I saw a lot of people commenting that they had a problem with the lighting in this scene and quite a few others. Much like late Game of Thrones, people are saying that they struggled to even make out what was going on. And now I look, the thumbnail that I took of creepy Daemon and his niece, it's barely bright enough to make out what's going on. And talking of making out, Daemon, put your niece down. This is not Doctor Who, and your niece is not a fish finger. Now, in my Rings of Power reviews, I've been contrasting the positive social lessons that a person can draw from the work of Tolkien and what seem like the very bad lessons that Rings of Power has to offer. And that got me thinking, is House of the Dragon a socially good thing? Was Game of Thrones? They both deliver a lot of drama. Unlike many other shows, the heroes and the villains are a lot more ambiguous, and in doing that, it has a ring of truth about it. House of the Dragon maybe goes even further in this than Game of Thrones did. Thrones at least had Ned Stark with his honour and duty, his loyalty. It had Robb, who was brave and bold. There's just nobody in this show that's a positive role model or aspirational in any way to anybody. Everyone is just kind of self-interested, and I'm not sure this level of nihilism is either a social good or necessarily healthy. If you want me to talk about that more or disagree, drop a comment below. So I left the last part at Laena's funeral, and Jace has been sent over to comfort Laena's daughters. Jace is conflicted, too embarrassed to say anything. He knows Harwin was his father, so he doesn't feel a link to the girls. He doesn't feel like he belongs at the funeral. I was saying that even if Laenor is not his father, he is still related to the girls. They're not his first cousins like they would be if he was Laenor's son. They're not the first cousins via Laena and Laenor, but they are still related because the girl's father is the boy's mother's uncle. So that would make them whatever that is. I looked it up because nobody told me. I think they may be first cousins once removed. I wonder how it works with Targaryens. Do you get arranged marriages between third cousins met with strong disapproval from older members of the family saying, "That's sick"? I know. Couldn't they find a closer relative? I mean, you wouldn't want the bloodlines to get impure by actually having functional genetics. One of the girls reaches out and grabs his hand, and they're doing some very good visual storytelling again. It shows a strong bond between them, but in truth, I have no idea what the relationship of these characters is. Have they even ever met before? If so, it was off camera again. Speaking of which, the engagement of Alicent's eldest son to her daughter, that happened off camera too. The proposal that the princess made to wed Alicent's daughter to her son, and the disagreement between the king and the queen that occurred because of that, stone me, that seems to have disappeared, also off camera. Aemond wants to approach as well and give comfort, but he's too awkward. He's sullen and none of the other kids seem to like him. I have no idea why again, this may come as a shock, but any reasons for that happening happened off camera. Just so much of the story gets lost in the time jumps. Otto finds Aegon, his grandson, passed out from drinking too much wine and boots him to wake him up before scolding him and sending him off to bed. Now, if Alicent and the king had any sense at all, they would have bundled Aegon off to go and stay with his grandfather so he didn't turn into a spoiled brat. He may even have made a serviceable king out of him. But this is more of a problem. Daemon and the princess being reckless, that's entirely in their character. But what's Otto's character? He wants power, he wants legacy, he wants the throne for his family, and Aegon being like that is ruining the chances of Otto getting what he wants. So why would he tolerate this? This is a problem because it seems to go against the core motivations of Otto's character. I've been thinking more about how the king could avoid the looming civil war. If the country really will rebel if a female monarch is installed, he has to remove his daughter as heir. He's got no choice. Maybe replace her with one of her sons. He could have gone with one of his sons, but they're both disasters. The princess's offer of marriage of her eldest son to the king's eldest daughter in retrospect seems like the best choice. If the country really will rebel with a female monarch, grant her the marriage on the condition that her son become heir to the throne instead of her. All the big players will be satisfied and war hopefully averted. You could have easily done that, House of the Dragon. Just do it off camera and then tell me what happened later. That's the ideal way to capture drama. This show is getting glowing reviews and I'm still just finding it okay. It has some very good moments, some issues, but it's very far from perfect. I think some people may be giving it an easy ride just because of how bad Rings of Power, She-Hulk and just entertainment in general has gotten. But different people look for different things. A friend of mine watched this episode and he said he thought it was very good. I asked why and he said, and I quote, "It has some good dragon action." Speaking of which, Alicent's son Aemond has slinked off. At first I was thinking he was going to find his uncle grinding on his mom. Instead he found a massive dragon, which is arguably less scary and psychologically damaging. It's Laena's dragon Vhagar who now doesn't have a rider. And he really wants a dragon, so he rides the dragon and claims it and nearly falls from the saddle to his death. The other kids are woken up by the enormous noise of the dragon, and when Aemond lands, he's confronted by Laena's kids and the princess's boys. A fight breaks out because one of the girls wants to claim the dragon instead of him, and embarrassingly for this show, this is probably the best fight in the series yet. That's right, 5 kids squabbling in a cave is the best fight in the show so far. Aemond is largely winning against the smaller other 4 children and taunts the boys for not being their father's true children. One of them pulls out a knife and boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast. As Aemond is about to beat someone's skull in with a rock, the princess's youngest son slashes him in the face, popping his eye with a knife. And that's when everything hits the fan. But for now, I'm out of time. So there's going to have to be a part 3 tomorrow, I guess.
I hope it doesn't sound arrogant when I say that I am the greatest man in the world.
Thank heavens the Rings of Power is finally finished. Now I can focus more on House of the Dragon and maybe actually have a little fun, because I'm getting left behind on the episodes here. So where was I when I left off? The Queen's son Aemond had just had a brawl with Rhaenyra's children as well as Daemon's, causing him to lose an eye when the princess's youngest child slashed him with a knife. The Kingsguard arrived to break up the fight, and we cut to the Great Hall. The king brought everyone together to find out what happened, and the kids are bickering non-stop. I know I've been complaining about the time jumps, but please can we cut another 10 years and get rid of these kids? At this point I'll even take another uncomfortably long 10-minute scene of a woman in labour screaming. Why has this become a trend? Why does Hollywood think that I want to hear bickering children in my entertainment? I occasionally watch a series called Evil on the CBS network, and one of the protagonists has 4 daughters who squabble and talk over each other constantly, and it makes the show a lot less enjoyable to watch. That and the constant insertion of politics. I maybe missed the meeting where the world decided that all art, past, present and future, everywhere in the world had to revolve around the current American political system. And this invokes an interesting topic. When does a piece of film or art cease to be art and instead become political propaganda? I mean, how dare Tolkien not address the election of Donald Trump in his writing? It's clearly no excuse that Tolkien died in 1973. Thank heavens we had Amazon to come along and correct that clear oversight. Now, taking the definition of art to be the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination, typically in a visual form such as painting or sculpture, producing works to be appreciated primarily for their beauty or emotional power. And I'd also maybe add to enrich people's lives, to make people happier or more contented, to encourage eudaimonia. The most extreme version I can think of for art becoming propaganda was the CW show Supergirl, where they had Superman in one scene awkwardly use the phrase, "I'm with her," as a reference to Hillary Clinton's campaign slogan for that election year. And in the same series, they had the villains openly talking about their planet Daxam and how they plan to make Daxam great again, as an obvious reference to Donald Trump's famous campaign slogan. At that point, has the show stopped being art and become instead a long campaign ad? So where does House of the Dragon fall in this? Because from some media sources, it does not seem to be immune. There was a story that ran in the UK paper The Metro, which is not a great news source, but if I was to say it was bad, that would give the incorrect impression that there's a functional news source in the UK. But there is a Mark Twain quote that goes, "If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do, you're misinformed," which is quite clever, and that would be expected of him, but sadly the quote is somewhat brought down by there apparently being no evidence that he ever said it. There's also a quote attributed to Thomas Jefferson saying, "Nothing can now be believed which is seen in a newspaper. Truth itself becomes suspicious by being put into that polluted vehicle." In the Metro article, they quoted House of the Dragon actress Olivia Cooke, who said that the overturning of Roe v Wade was reflective of the Game of Thrones world, saying, "It's incredibly disheartening. Women in Westeros, they're expected to breed as early an age as possible, and in Texas, that's the same." But those things are not really the same at all. Being forced to get pregnant is not really directly comparable, morally or otherwise, to not being given an abortion. It misses out one, let's say, very crucial part of the process, and also misses out any rights that unborn children should or shouldn't have. So sadly, it appears that Olivia Cooke is maybe not the sharpest chisel in the toolbox. House of the Dragon showrunner Miguel Sapochnik was quoted by Bounding Into Comics as saying, "The hope and intention of the show, beyond the primary one of entertainment, is to shine a light on how the experience of men and women in this world has parallels to our own past and present." He went on to say that the theme of the childbirth scene from episode 1 was torture, saying each birth in this show has a theme, just as the battles I've filmed in the past have a central concept. The theme of this birth scene was torture. So in other words, it would seem that they've made the show intentionally worse for the viewer to watch because they wanted to force in politics. What they claimed was the primary purpose of the show, that being entertainment, has come a distant second to the need to comment on decisions taken by the US Supreme Court. Getting back to the show, the Queen is angry at Aegon for being drunk and not being there to defend his brother. Why was nobody keeping an eye on the kids at all? The King and the Queen are enraged that their son has lost an eye, and this all just kind of feels disjointed. I've no idea how the kids ended up this way because it all happened off camera. I've no idea why Alicent and Rhaenyra have changed into the very different characters that they are now. Because again, it was all off camera. A long argument begins and all parties are lying thoroughly throughout, including the King. Rhaenyra says her kids were defending themselves against an accusation that they're illegitimate, which they are, and they weren't defending themselves against anything. Her and Daemon's kids attacked first. The King wants to know why his son Aemond told this lie, and who told him, and he asks this despite the King knowing that the entire thing is true. His weakness is the cause of nearly all of the country's problems. His son points the finger at his older brother Aegon. Rhaenyra was hoping he'd point his finger at the Queen. The Queen was hoping the King would have to face up to the truth. So the King questions Aegon, and he says, "We know, Father. We all know. Just look at them." There are times when being kind is no real kindness at all. Like if you catch your child stealing. It's no kindness to pretend it didn't happen. So you either have to remedy the behaviour or encourage them to get into politics. The King refuses to do anything and demands instead that they stop the infighting. The Queen says that's insufficient. Her son's lost an eye. The Queen wants one of Rhaenyra's son's eyes in return. The King refuses and she orders Sir Criston to take out an eye on her behalf. And boy did that escalate quickly again. Sir Criston refuses, saying that he's her protector, and he's right. Taking children's eyes out is hardly in his remit. The King says it's over and says anyone that questions the children's legitimacy from that point on will have their tongue removed. The Queen grabs a knife from the King and goes for the children. She's stopped by Rhaenyra.
You've gone too far. What have I done but what was expected of me? Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law.
As Alicent and Rhaenyra divide, the two camps form around them, and it's a nice piece of foreshadowing for the coming conflict. Rhaenyra seeks alliances for what's coming. She wants to marry Daemon, but her husband is in the way. So they fake his death so he can go and be gay on another continent. And all they have to do to make it work and make his parents think he's dead is kill an innocent person so they can use his corpse to fake the death. The morality of the characters in this show is appalling. So that's it for episode 7. A bit of a mixed bag for me.
Could you make me a cup of tea, please, Stephanie?